Marge Ellison woke up earlier than usual that morning. The sun had barely stretched across the windows of her modest condo in Cincinnati, and the air still held a chill from the night. She sat at her kitchen table wrapped in a worn blue cardigan that used to belong to her late husband, Harold. She took her coffee like always, 2 sugars, no cream, and flipped through the community newsletter she'd already read twice this week. The quiet was comforting mostly. At least that's what she told herself. Retirement had given her more time than she knew what to do with, and most days that time was spent in silence. No grandkids to babysit, no garden to tend, just her and her memories. The landline rang just as she reached the end of the crossword. She blinked at it. Hardly anyone called the house phone anymore. She answered with her usual, "Hello, this is Marge." "Hey, Mom." Danny. Her only child. Her only everything. His voice was steady, but it carried that polite stiffness that had become his tone of choice over the past few years. "Danny," she said warmly but cautious. "Well, this is a surprise. Yeah, I know I should call more. Sorry." Marge smiled softly. "It's all right, honey. Everything okay?" There was a pause just long enough to signal that something was coming. "I just wanted to tell you that Kelsey and I are getting married." For a moment she thought maybe the phone had cut out. "Oh," she finally said, blinking. That's wonderful news. Congratulations." "Thanks." "Yeah, it's gonna be this summer, probably late June. Kelsey wants something simple but elegant. She always struck me as someone who knew what she wanted." Marge said carefully. "Yeah, she's been planning most of it already. Venue's locked down. Invitations are going out soon." Marge set her mug down gently. "That's exciting. I'd love to help out if you two need anything. Planning finances. I have a little saved up for a day like this." Another pause. "Well, we may need help with the floral deposit and catering," he said, voice slightly more distant. "But Kelsey's taking care of everything else. She's kind of got it all mapped out." Marge felt something tighten in her chest. Of course. That makes sense. Weddings are her generation's thing now, right? She laughed softly, trying to keep the air light. "Just let me know how I can help." "Yeah, she'll email you the details. It's mostly just logistics at this point." "She can email me." "All right. Yeah, it's just easier. She's got a spreadsheet going." Marge stared out the window at the maple tree in her yard. It was beginning to bud. "Well, just know I'm happy for you, Danny. Truly. I've been hoping you'd find someone. Thanks, Mom. I imagine your father would be proud too." A beat of silence. "I should get going. We've got a cake tasting in 15. All right. Take care. Bye, Mom." Click. Marge sat in the quiet, the dial tone humming for a moment before she set the phone down. That was it. No. "We'd love to have you involved. No mention of dress shopping, rehearsal dinners, or family photos. Just, Kelsey will email you." She stood slowly and went to the bookshelf in the hallway. She pulled out an old photo album and flipped to a picture of Danny at his high school graduation. He was grinning, cap askew, one arm draped over her shoulder. They both looked happy, messy, proud. That boy had called her mama. That boy had cried when she left for her night shift. That boy used to ask for her advice on everything from math homework to dating girls. Where did that boy go? The doorbell rang sharp and fast. She opened it to find Joanne standing there, sunglasses pushed up on her head, a reusable grocery bag slung over one shoulder. "Well," Joe said, pushing past her into the kitchen like she owned the place. "You look like someone just canceled Christmas." Marge followed her friend, smiling faintly. "Danny's getting married." Joe dropped the bag on the counter. "About time. That girl Cassie Kelsey." "Right. The blonde one. Always smells like perfume and judgment." Marge chuckled. "That's not fair." Joe rolled her eyes. "It's accurate." Marge poured her a cup of coffee, then sat down with her own, cradling it like it might ground her. He called to tell me. They're getting married in June. Well, congratulations, Grandma-to-be. Marge winced slightly. Let's not jump ahead. Jo took a sip, then narrowed her eyes. What aren't you telling me? I offered to help. Planning money, whatever they needed. And he said Kelsey has it all under control. I'm just supposed to wait for an email. Jo made a face like she'd bitten into a lemon. An email from the bride. That's how people do it now. No, Marge. That's how people avoid other people now. It's different. Marge shrugged. Maybe I'm just out of touch. No, you're a mother. You raised him. You should be involved. You deserve to be. Marge didn't respond right away. She took another sip, then looked out the window. I just want him to be happy. If that means I stay out of the way, then so be it. Jo leaned back in her chair. You're being too nice. Again. Marge glanced at the calendar hanging on the fridge. June was still blank. She reached for a red pen and circled the 24th. Tentative, she wrote underneath. Are you going? Jo asked. Marge didn't answer immediately. She capped the pen, then placed it on the table with care. Of course I'm going. He's my son. Her voice was steady, but even Jo could hear the hurt hiding beneath it. The wedding invitation arrived in a sleek ivory envelope with gold lettering like it belonged to someone rich and famous. Marge opened it carefully at the kitchen table, slicing the flap with the same butter knife she used every morning for toast. The cardstock was thick, textured, elegant. It even smelled expensive, like perfume and printer ink. But as her eyes scanned the embossed names, her smile slowly faded. Kelsey Harper and Daniel Ellison cordially invite you to their union in celebration of love and family. No mention of the groom's mother. No hosted by Mrs. Marjorie Ellison. No recognition. Not even in the fine print. Just Kelsey's parents, Douglas and Cynthia Harper, listed prominently at the bottom. Marge sat back in her chair. A strange feeling rose in her chest. It wasn't sadness, not yet. It was more like an ache of invisibility. The next morning, her inbox chimed with a message titled, Wedding Logistics. Action needed. It was from Kelsey. No greeting. No hi Marge. No signature. Just a spreadsheet link and a brief message. Hi, please see attached breakdown of pending expenses. If you could handle the following, that would be helpful. Floral vendor deposit, $2,000. $500. Live trio band for cocktail hour, $1, $800. Thank you, Kelsey. No emojis. No, we appreciate you. Not even a please. Marge stared at it for a while, then clicked the link. The spreadsheet had tabs: vendor's guest list, seating chart, bride notes. She wasn't on any of them. She reached for her checkbook and filled out 2 checks carefully, neatly. It wasn't about the money, it was about helping. About being part of something. Later that afternoon, Marge met Jo at their usual spot, River's Edge Diner. Vinyl booths, burnt coffee, and the same waitress named Sandy, who had worked there since the 90s. The place wasn't fancy, but it was familiar. So, Jo said, stirring a packet of sugar into her tea. Did you get the invite? Marge nodded. Jo raised an eyebrow. And I'm not in it. Jo snorted. You mean like not mentioned? Not at all. It reads like she's marrying herself and your son is a groomsman. That's rich. She also emailed me a list of expenses. Asked me to cover the flowers and band. Jo leaned back, arms crossed. And you did it. I did. Marge. Marge took a sip of her lukewarm coffee. It's not worth fighting over. Yes, it is. You're being erased from your own son's story. Marge gave her a look. It's his wedding, Jo, not mine. But you raised him. Alone. You were there for every scraped knee, every science fair, every midnight fever. This isn't about wanting the spotlight, it's about basic respect. Marge stayed quiet. Joe continued. You know what I think? I think Kelsey wants the fairy tale wedding, without the inconvenient mother-in-law. She's not rude, she's just meticulous. She's a little dictator in designer heels. Marge smiled despite herself. Later that week, a second email arrived. This time, the subject line read, "Dress code details." Marge clicked it, already bracing herself. "Hi, just a quick note that we're asking all guests to avoid wearing navy or white as they're part of the bridal palette. Preferably stick to soft blush tones, beige or pastels. Thanks." Kelsey Marge closed the email and looked down at her favorite dress, the one she wore to Harold's retirement dinner. Navy blue. Timeless. Elegant. No frills. Of course it was now off limits. She folded it carefully and placed it back in the closet next to Harold's old blazers. 2 days later, Marge tried calling Danny. It went to voicemail. The next evening she tried again. This time he answered. "Hey, Mom. Hi, sweetheart. I got Kelsey's email about the dress colors. I just wanted to ask if it'd be all right to invite a couple of my friends. You remember Rita and George? They were like family when you were little." There was a pause. I think Kelsey wants to keep it kind of intimate." Marge blinked. Intimate. "There are over 150 people invited. I know, but she's managing the list really tightly. You know how weddings are." Marge felt her throat tighten. "Right. I understand. I mean, I don't think it's personal." "No, of course not," she said quickly. "It's your day. I'll just watch from the sidelines and cheer." "Don't say that," Danny said, but there was no conviction in his voice. "You'll be there. Your family. Family." It sounded more like a title than a truth. After they hung up, Marge sat at her desk and opened an old manila folder labeled Danny. Childhood. Inside were drawings, certificates, crayon-colored cards. One said, "Best Mom Ever" in messy green letters. She ran her fingers over the words. A week later, she visited the boutique that Kelsey's email had suggested for appropriate dresses. The salesgirl barely looked up. "Looking for something in beige or blush?" she asked. Marge nodded. "Well, we've got some options, but pastel season ended early this year." Marge tried on 3 dresses. None of them felt like her. One made her look washed out. Another was too tight. And the third looked like a bridesmaid's second choice. She settled on a soft, rose-toned, knee-length dress with a lace overlay. It wasn't her, but it would do. On her way out, she saw a mother and daughter trying on dresses together, laughing in front of the mirror. The girl beamed as her mother adjusted the straps of her gown. Marge smiled at the scene, then quickly turned away before the tears reached her lashes. That night, Joe stopped by unannounced again, carrying a pint of ice cream and a look of defiance. "You know what we're doing," Joe said. We're throwing a pre-wedding brunch. Just you, me, and people who actually like you. I'm not trying to compete. You're not. You're reminding yourself you matter." Marge smiled. "You're a pain in the ass." "I know," Joe said, plopping on the couch. "That's why you keep me around." They shared the ice cream and watched reruns of The Golden Girls. For the first time in weeks, Marge let herself laugh. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling. She wasn't a guest at this wedding. She was a guest in her own life. Marge arrived at the Riverlight Ballroom 30 minutes early, hoping for a quiet moment before the whirlwind began. She had imagined slipping in, catching Danny before the ceremony, hugging him tight, and whispering something only a mother would say. Something simple. Something real. But the moment she stepped out of her car, she knew she didn't belong. Everything about the venue screamed money. White roses lined the entrance. A string quartet played something light and floaty. Guests in designer suits sipped champagne and took selfies in front of a custom floral wall. Marge adjusted the pale rose dress she'd bought, still not her, but acceptable. and walked toward the front entrance with quiet determination. Then she saw it. Mounted beside the grand doors was a large foam core sign, glossy, professionally printed. It showed a collage of engagement photos: Kelsey in a white dress, Danny in a pale blue suit, both laughing like a couple from a magazine. But in the bottom right corner was a photo of Marge cropped from Danny's high school graduation, her mouth slightly open mid-laugh. Above it, in a scripted gold font, staff access only, no entry past this point. Her image was being used as a joke, a sign. Guests chuckled as they passed by, barely noticing her standing just a few feet away from the sign. Marge's stomach dropped. Her heart beat too fast. She turned to the nearest staff member, a young man in a headset. "Excuse me," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "There's a photo of me on that sign." He looked at it, then back at her. "Oh, yeah, that's part of the bride's theme. Blending families with humor, I think." "It's not funny," she said, her voice lower. He offered an awkward smile. "You'll need a wristband to enter. Do you have one?" Marge blinked. "A wristband?" "Yes, ma'am. All VIP family members and close friends were mailed wristbands. Without it, you'll have to enter through the side door." "I wasn't sent one," she said. He looked uncomfortable. "Let me get the coordinator." Before he could walk away, Marge touched his arm. "It's fine." She stepped back, letting others move past her, watching as people laughed and posed in front of the very sign that turned her into a punchline. Inside the ballroom, it was worse. White silk curtains framed every wall. Soft pink uplighting cast a glow that made everything look like a bridal magazine. Waiters passed by with trays of cucumber water and champagne. Marge scanned the room. There was Danny, tall, handsome, in his light gray suit, standing near the cake. He was talking with Douglas and Cynthia Harper. Kelsey was across the room, giving directions to the DJ. Marge took a deep breath and made her way toward her son. "Danny," she said, gently touching his arm. He turned. "Oh, Mom, you made it." "I did." He glanced behind her. "Did you, come through the main entrance?" "Yes." "Okay, well," he lowered his voice. "Look, the sign, it was Kelsey's idea. She thought it was light-hearted. With my face on it, she didn't mean anything by it. She just wanted to show that we're not uptight." Marge looked into his eyes. "Do you think it's funny?" Danny hesitated. "It's just a theme, Mom." She stepped back. "A theme. You're here, right? That's what matters." "Is it?" He gave her a brief hug, polite, almost formal, then turned back to his conversation. Marge stood there for a moment, unsure where to go. Unsure what to do. There was no seat assigned for her, no program handed to her, no welcome. She spotted Cynthia Harper near the bar and approached her. "Cynthia," she said, offering a small nod. "Lovely setup." Cynthia looked her over, glass of Prosecco in hand. "Oh, you got in?" "Wonderful." "There was a sign outside," Marge said, carefully, "with my photo on it." Cynthia smiled, as if amused. "Yes, wasn't that cheeky?" Kelsey said it was a playful nod to tradition. Marge blinked. "Tradition? You know, mothers of the groom trying to take over. It's satire. Very Gen Z." Marge opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Cynthia turned to talk to someone else. Marge found an empty corner away from the floral arch and champagne towers. She pulled out her phone and opened her banking app. She stared at the screen. $4. $300, that's how much she'd contributed to the wedding so far. Flowers. Band. Even part of the cake. She tapped, scrolled, found the florist's invoice, the band's Venmo. She clicked cancel payment on the pending transaction for the band. Then she called her bank and requested a reversal of the floral deposit, citing unauthorized charge. The representative hesitated but complied. Marge felt her hands trembling, but not from fear. From clarity. She slid the phone back into her purse, stood up straighter, and walked out of the ballroom. No drama, no scene. Just gone. Outside, the sun was lower now, the air cooler. She heard the string quartet strike up the wedding march inside, but she kept walking past the parking lot, past the valet, past everything. As she reached her car, her phone buzzed. A call. Kelsey Harper. Calling. Marge let it ring twice, then answered. "Hi, Kelsey." "What the hell?" Marjorie Kelsey hissed. "The band just called and said the payment bounced. Did you cancel it?" "Yes." "You can't just do that." "They're here. It's our wedding day, I know," Marge said, calm. "That's why I didn't make a scene. I just left. You're ruining this. For everyone." "No," Marge replied softly. "You ruined it when you decided I was a prop instead of a person. You're acting insane. Goodbye, Kelsey." She ended the call and turned off her phone. Later that night, she sat on her couch in silence, the soft hum of the fridge the only sound. She didn't cry. She didn't pour a glass of wine. She just sat. She had loved Danny more than anything. Still did. But love shouldn't come with conditions like humiliation. The next morning, her email inbox was flooded. Some messages from Danny, others from Harper family contacts, one from a lawyer representing the venue, all demanding explanations, apologies, restitution. She read none of them. Instead, she pulled out a map from her drawer. Her finger traced west, toward the coast, toward a new beginning. By Sunday morning, Marge's name was on the lips of everyone who mattered in Cincinnati's upper circles, and not for the reasons a mother would hope. She sat at her small kitchen table in silence, holding a cold cup of coffee. Her inbox was overflowing, but she didn't need to open the emails to know their tone. She'd lived long enough to recognize the signs of polite outrage. The subject lines were enough. Very disappointed. Unbelievable behavior, what were you thinking? She'd already deleted 3 voicemails without listening. The last one was from Danny. His voice was tight, controlled, furious beneath the surface. "Mom, I can't believe you'd sabotage our wedding like that. Kelsey is devastated. You humiliated us. You didn't just walk out, you blew it all up. I honestly don't know who you are anymore." She knew exactly who she was. That's why she'd walked away. At the River's Edge diner, Jo slid into the booth across from Marge with a copy of the Ohio Post folded under her arm. Her expression was unreadable. "I'm not sure if you want to see this," she said, unfolding the paper anyway. The headline was local, tucked under a story about school board elections, mother of the groom causes scene, at high-profile wedding. Exclusive photos inside. Marge didn't need to see the pictures to know what they showed. According to Jo, someone had posted about the sign with her face, the no-entry joke, and the internet, in its infinite shallowness, had eaten it up. A few influencers reposted it with captions like "Petty Queen" and "Boomer Drama." And then came the twist when the florist and band were suddenly unpaid. The narrative turned. Now, she wasn't just a punchline, she was a villain. Apparently, Cynthia Harper's sister's daughter runs a wedding blog. Jo explained, sipping her iced tea. "She's spinning it like you went full Carrie on the reception." Marge didn't respond. Jo leaned in. "You okay?" "No," Marge said, honest. "But I'm not sorry." Jo grinned. "That's my girl." Back at home, Marge opened the legal email with a glass of water and a steady hand. "We regret to inform you that due to the disruption caused by your withdrawal of committed payments, and in light of damages to the event schedule and contractual agreements, the Harper family is considering pursuing financial restitution." She didn't finish reading. Instead, she opened a new tab and searched small coastal towns in Washington state, retirement-friendly. She clicked through photos of Port Townsend, marinas, old bookstores, antique shops, people who didn't know her, people who didn't need her to be anything but herself. Later that night, Danny showed up. He didn't call first. He knocked hard. Marge opened the door, surprised by the sight of him still in his wedding suit minus the tie. Hair messy, dark circles under his eyes. He looked tired. Not just from the day, but from life. "Can I come in?" he asked. She stepped aside. He didn't sit. "Why did you do it?" he asked. "Why sabotage the one day that was supposed to be about us?" Marge stood calmly. "I didn't sabotage anything. I removed myself from something that clearly didn't include me. You made it about you." "No," she said. "I've made my whole life about you. That's the problem." Danny looked away. "I watched myself become smaller and smaller, Danny. First in the emails, then at the meetings I wasn't invited to, then on the sign." Her voice shook. That sign wasn't a joke. It was a warning. He didn't speak. I was reduced to a maybe guest, a walking checkbook. Not your mother. Not your family. Danny swallowed. "You could have just talked to me." "I tried. You didn't hear me." Silence. He finally sat on the edge of the couch. "Do you know how hard it was to explain to everyone that you just walked out?" "Yes," she said. "And I know how hard it was to be in that room and realize my own son thought that was acceptable." He looked at her for a long time, like seeing her for the first time in years. "I'm going to Port Townsend," she said softly. He blinked. "What I found a place by the water, quiet, small. I'm signing the lease this week. You're moving." "Yes." "What about—" He stopped. "What about us? What about grandkids? What about holidays?" Marge simply looked at him. "You'll be fine." He stood unsure. "This is really happening." "Yes," she said. "It is." Over the next few days, she sold her condo furniture on Facebook Marketplace. She donated boxes of clothes. She packed only what she could fit in the back of her aging Subaru. The city that had once been her whole world now felt like a dusty guest room, familiar, but no longer hers. Joe helped load the last of the boxes. "You sure about this?" she asked. Marge nodded. Joe handed her a small wrapped package. "Don't open it till you're there." Marge smiled. "You're the best friend a girl could ask for." "Damn right." On her last night in Cincinnati, Marge sat on her floor cross-legged, eating leftover Chinese food from the carton. The place was nearly empty, echoey. She liked it that way. She opened her phone one last time. A new message from Danny. "I still think you were wrong. But I get it now. I think. Good luck, Mom." No heart, no emoji, just words. It was enough. She turned off the phone and looked around. Tomorrow she'd drive west, to the ocean, to silence, to peace. The Pacific air was sharper than Marge expected, crisp and full of salt. It filled her lungs like a promise. She stepped out of her Subaru and stretched her back. 3 days of driving across the country had left her sore in places she didn't know could ache. But there it was, Port Townsend, Washington. Her new beginning. The rental cottage was exactly what the listing promised, small, old, and full of charm. White siding, blue shutters, and a crooked porch swing that squeaked in the breeze. Marge stood on the front steps with the key in her hand, heart pounding. Not from fear, from possibility. She turned the key and stepped inside. It didn't take long to make the place feel like hers. A few framed photos. A familiar pillow from the old couch. Harold's cardigan hanging by the door. The living room windows faced the bay. In the early mornings, the water turned silver. In the evenings, gold. Seagulls floated like lazy punctuation marks across the sky. There was no skyline, no traffic, no chaos. Just quiet, and Marge learning how to be alone without being lonely. She started with small routines. Every morning she walked down to the Lighthouse Mug, a cozy coffee shop, where the baristas already remembered her name by day 4. She brought a book, sometimes a mystery, sometimes a memoir, and sat by the window with a black coffee and a warm blueberry scone. On Wednesdays, she attended a free watercolor class at the community center. Most of the attendees were women her age, retired teachers, ex-nurses, a former librarian who now painted seagulls with stunning accuracy. Marge didn't consider herself artistic, but her first attempt at painting a vase of lilacs made the instructor smile. "You've got a gentle hand," the woman said. "That's rare." Marge smiled. It felt good to be seen for something new. On Fridays, she visited the public library. It was small, just 2 floors with a reading nook for children and a fireplace on the upper level. One afternoon, she sat near the window and watched a little girl, maybe 7 or 8, sprawled on the rug with picture books all around her. She was so focused. Her lips moved as she read to herself. Marge felt a warmth bloom in her chest. Danny used to read like that. Hours on the floor, surrounded by Legos and dinosaurs and books about space. For a brief moment, she wondered if he'd told anyone she left, if anyone missed her. She opened her book and read 2 chapters without checking her phone once. Joe emailed once a week. Each message was short, punchy, and usually full of local gossip. Rita fell off her porch again. She's fine, but claims she saw Elvis before she hit the grass. They painted the diner purple. Sandy hates it. Says it looks like Barney's funeral. Still can't believe you left. Still proud that you did. Marge replied with photos of her view. Of paintings. Of the dog she'd started feeding, an old Labrador mix that wandered onto her porch every morning for toast crusts and back scratches. They hadn't named each other. They didn't need to. Then came the email. Subject line. Guess who's expecting Joe, of course. Marge clicked it open, her heart thudding harder than she wanted to admit. It's official. Kelsey's pregnant. Danny told Rita, who told George, who told me while we were both in line for gas. Small towns are great. Anyway, just thought you should know. I don't expect this to change anything, but I also know your heart. Love you always. Joe. Marge stared at the screen. Kelsey was pregnant. She hadn't heard from Danny in weeks. Not a text. Not a call. Not even a passive-aggressive email. A grandchild. She imagined holding a baby, round cheeks, warm weight in her arms. She imagined lullabies, Christmas mornings, sticky fingers and soft giggles. Then she imagined Kelsey's voice. "This is my child," and Danny's silence. She closed the email without replying. That night she couldn't sleep. She sat on the porch swing with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, watching the stars wink awake over the water. The old dog lay at her feet, snoring gently. Marge pulled out the photo from her wallet, the same one from Danny's graduation. It was creased now, corners soft from years of handling. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She just whispered, "I still love you. But I love me now, too." The next morning there was a knock at her door. 3 firm raps. Confident. She opened it slowly. There on her porch stood Danny. Older. Thinner. Paler than she remembered. He wore a wrinkled hoodie, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a paper coffee cup. He looked like a man who had lost sleep, who had driven too far with too many things to say. "Hi, Mom." She blinked, her hand still on the doorknob. "What are you doing here?" He shifted his weight. "I needed to see you." She said nothing, just opened the door a little wider. Danny stepped inside, glancing around the cottage. "It's nice," he said. It looks like you. I like it, she said simply. He nodded silent. I heard, she said. He looked up. About the baby. Yes. He exhaled. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't know if you wanted me to know. They sat down across from each other. The air felt thick with things unsaid. Kelsey's open to you being involved, Danny said. But it would have to be on her terms. She's worried after how everything went. Marge tilted her head. What does that mean? Supervised visits, scheduled appointments. She just wants peace, for the baby. So do I, Marge said. But peace doesn't come with conditions. Danny rubbed his hands together. I know it's complicated. It's not. Marge said. You want me to apologize, to come back and play along, to smile and shrink and say thank you for being tolerated. He opened his mouth, but she held up her hand. I won't do that. I won't teach your child that love looks like silence, that family means swallowing pain to keep the peace. Danny's eyes watered, just slightly. I miss you, he said. I miss you too. The boy who asked me to sing when he had nightmares. The boy who danced on my feet in the kitchen. He blinked fast. But I won't step back into a role where I'm invisible, she said gently. He nodded slowly. I don't know what comes next, he said. Neither do I, she replied. But I know where I stand now. They sat in silence. Finally, Danny stood. I should go. She nodded. He stepped toward her, uncertain, then gave her a quick, real hug. I'll call, he said. She nodded again, this time with a soft smile. I'll be here. After he left, Marge stood at the window watching his car disappear down the winding road. She felt a weight lift, not because anything was fixed, but because something had been reclaimed. Herself. Her voice. Her space. She stepped onto the porch and sat on the swing. The dog curled beside her like always. She reached into her bag, pulled out Joe's mystery gift, and unwrapped it. Inside, a small painted rock. On it, in Joe's loopy handwriting, You don't have to go back to matter. Marge smiled. For the first time in a long while, she believed it. The mornings in Port Townsend had begun to cool. Fall was settling in the kind that came quietly, soft winds, burnt orange leaves, and the smell of salt thickening in the air. Marge sat by the window with her coffee wrapped in Harold's old cardigan, watching the fog roll in off the water. The Labrador mix lay at her feet, content and snoring. It had been 2 weeks since Danny's visit. She hadn't heard from him since. She didn't take it personally. It wasn't that kind of silence. It was the kind that said, I'm thinking. I'm unlearning. I'm not ready. She knew the difference now. At noon, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Washington area code. She hesitated, then answered. Mom, Danny. His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it all morning. I'm outside. She opened the door. He stood there holding a small paper bag and looking slightly damp from the mist. His shoulders were hunched, not from cold, but from carrying something heavy. Hi, he said. Come in. He walked in slowly, eyes scanning the space again. This time more carefully. I brought cinnamon rolls, he said, offering the bag. From that bakery you mentioned. Thank you, she said, setting it on the counter. They sat in silence. Then Danny took a breath. Kelsey wants you to apologize. Not for everything. Just for making her look bad. Marge didn't flinch. And if I don't, she says, we can't have a relationship with you. Or with the baby. There it was. The ultimatum, wrapped in civility but sharp. Marge nodded slowly, then stood. She walked to the window, the ocean peeking through pine trees in the distance. I'm going to tell you something, she said, and I need you to really hear it. Danny looked up. All my life I was taught that being a good woman meant swallowing pain, keeping peace, saying yes when I wanted to scream no. And when you were born, I did the same for you. I made myself small so you could feel big. I held my tongue so you could feel right. I gave and gave until I barely recognized myself. She turned. I'm done doing that. Danny's jaw tightened. I love you. I always will. And if you ever come here with no conditions, no scripts, just you'll find my door open. But if all you bring me is a list of terms, I won't meet them. Not anymore. He looked away. I'm not asking for much, he muttered. You're asking me to betray myself, she said softly. That's not nothing. Silence. You'll never meet your grandchild, he said finally. Marge smiled, but it was the kind of smile that carried sadness and strength. Maybe not. But I'd rather be whole and alone than broken and tolerated. He stood. I thought you'd come around. I did, she said. Just not the way you wanted. He lingered a moment longer, then walked to the door. She didn't follow him. After he left, Marge stood still for a long time. No tears. No shaking. Just a quiet steadiness in her bones. She walked to the kitchen, made a fresh pot of coffee, and sat back down by the window. She opened her phone and typed a message. I chose peace. She hit send. To Joe. Moments later, a reply blinked in. Then you've already won. That afternoon, she took her easel out to the porch. The fog was lifting and the sun poured onto the water like honey. She painted slowly waves, sky, and the suggestion of a woman sitting on the rocks looking out. Not waiting, just being. A week later, a package arrived. No return address. Inside, a photo in a silver frame. A newborn baby swaddled in pale yellow. Chubby cheeks. Tiny fists. Tucked behind the photo was a handwritten note. Her name is Marjorie. Thought you'd want to know. Danny Marge stared at the note for a long time, then placed the frame gently on the shelf. Not as a promise, not as an invitation, just as truth. That night she lit a single candle, for the past, for the future, for herself. She stood barefoot on the porch, her dog at her side, the stars blinking awake above her, and she whispered one word to the sea. Enough. Not as in too much, as in I am. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to my channel for more real-life experiences and lessons learned. And remember, sharing these stories helps others recognize and address similar situations in their own lives. Thank you for being here with me through this journey. Stay strong, set healthy boundaries, and protect what truly matters.